From the New York Times, like I said earlier, the White House Office of Management and Budget issued a memo ordering a temporary halt to all federal financial assistance programs, potentially paralyzing a vast swath of federal programs. Let's see. It says the American people elected Donald J. Trump to be president of the United States and gave him a mandate to increase the impact of every federal taxpayer dollar. In fiscal year 2024, of the nearly $10 trillion that the federal government spent, more than $3 trillion was federal financial assistance, such as grants and loans. Career and political appointees in the executive branch have a duty to align federal spending and action with the will of the American people as expressed through the presidential priorities. This type of behavior, this kind of executive order, this kind of action taken by the president is it is exactly what the American people have looked for a long time, at least what the conservatives have. As soon as you start, talking about cutting any kind of program, there are going to be people that are going to say, well, don't cut my program. Don't cut the program that I like, which is part of the reason why it's so difficult to actually make cuts. But to see Donald Trump move not just so swiftly, but so decisively, and see the reaction from the left, I think that this speaks volumes about his intent. What his intent is with his administration, and I think that is to actually deliver on the promises that were made during the campaign.
I've been absolutely shocked at how rapidly he's done all of these different things. And that headline was classic. It might paralyze some of the program. Yeah. Please paralyze as many programs as possible. I can't wait.
This is exactly what we all voted for. This is exactly what we wanted. Trump came in with his feet on the ground running. It wasn't like his first term where he was kind of feeling people out. And, okay, let me see about this program. Let me see. He knows exactly what he wants to do. He wants to get in there and just cut the fat. And I'm all for it. This is exactly what I voted for. And all the people who are crying right now, listen, you weren't crying when Biden was sending money literally all over the world and just wasting it. Trump is in there. He's a man with a mission. He's a man with a plan. And I can't wait to see what else he's going to do. We're 8 days in. I can't see what else he's going to do.
I keep going to the U.S. debt clock. I don't know if you guys ever check. We should probably maybe even pull this up at some point. usdebtclock.org. And there's a ticker that shows the national debt going up. And it's going up at about $50,000 per second. So they just added a Doge clock.
Did they?
Yeah. And so far since Doge has been implemented, it's saved us $31 billion. It's in the upper left. You see that the Doge is the gold one. They just added it in that upper left box, the Doge clock. It looks like it's going up as fast as the debt, meaning that we are basically stifling our debt. Our debt is going to zero. Our debt is not going up right now.
Whoa, that's incredible. I don't know that I feel comfortable telling people
not the debt.
The deficit.
What I meant to say is the deficit. It looks like they've reduced the deficit to zero.
Well, I mean,
even close to zero. If this is accurate, which I've heard that it is.
No.
Just because you hear it doesn't mean it's true.
There are more commas in the U.S. national debt than in the Doge.
But look,
clock.
it's $50,000 a second. I mean, it looks like they're both going up at $50,000 a second.
Well, I imagine one would be stationary if it was actually erasing the increases. Well, and I don't want to sound like I don't want to be like the wet blanket here, because I think the Doge is great. I just don't want to overstate what.
Yeah, I'm not claiming that our deficit is now going up at zero, but it looks like if these numbers are both accurate, then that means that our deficit is not increasing.
What counts as Doge and what doesn't? So, like, if Donald Trump, has an executive order to cut spending, does that count as Doge? Is that on this clock here?
I don't know if it would be under Doge, or if it would be something that would just fall under OMB. I know that OMB and Doge are working closely together, and Donald Trump's pick for the secretary, or what, I don't know what his official title is, but the guy that runs OMB, I've heard him on a couple podcasts, and he's really got the desires of Donald Trump and what needs to be done. He's got his eyes really fixated on what needs to be done, and it sounds promising. I mean, obviously, anytime you're talking about government, you're going to have as many hurdles as the opposing party and the people who will be losing jobs and losing funding. They're going to be doing everything they can to cast you as evil. And all it takes is a few minutes on X this afternoon to see Democrats saying all these things are going to hurt this and hurt that and take funding from this and take funding from that. Most of the things And the average person doesn't actually think of this, but most of the things that they say, oh, this program's gonna be unfunded, and this program's not gonna get funded, and these things aren't gonna happen. Most of it is unconstitutional anyways, because it's not actually the federal government's mandate by the Constitution. It's probably something that they have. It's a power that they have expropriated from the states or from the people that they've given themselves to say, well, we're going to go ahead and use the necessary and proper clause or the commerce clause. And I will beat these two clauses to death, because these are the two clauses that have allowed the federal government to grow to the point where it doesn't resemble the intended government of the founders. The states have all the power that they need to pass laws and pass legislations. The federal government doesn't have to do everything. It can all these things can be done at the state level, and that is ideally that would be the best solution. If the federal government gets rid of a program and it's actually necessary in your state, or your state believes it's necessary, your state can do it. And I would love to see that happen more, as opposed to just say, oh, Donald Trump's an evil Nazi and blah, 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 you know? But what do you think that this is something that we're going to see more of, or what?
The fact that these are unconstitutional programs is what Doge is going to use as leverage to actually get rid of them, right? My personal opinion is I'm a huge fan of small government. I mean, I think probably everyone in this room is going to agree that we don't need to be spending on all of these things. And the more that you push it local, I mean, state is one place, but you could do it in a county or even a city, a lot of these programs. And they're not needed everywhere, and they don't affect everyone the same way. Every program is different. I hope we gut every single unconstitutional program. I would rather handle it elsewhere. Like you said, it just doesn't make sense. The federal government does not spend efficiently. That's why we need Doge in the first place. Like, I would rather give my money to someone who's gonna do a good job spending it. And you know, typically I'll lean towards private industry on that. It doesn't have to be the government at all. It doesn't have to be the state. It could be a business, right? Some things, you know, like obviously you want your fire and your police, probably those make sense, you know, to be provided by the government, but I definitely lean more towards deleting than otherwise. And I hope we get a ton of it. The federal judge blocking, you know, some of these executive orders that stop foreign aid, that bothers me. You know, I can't wait to see what ultimately happens there. But my take is like, slash everything. Just cut it. Just cut it. We got to get rid of everything.
Zeke, I've seen Chuck Schumer was, you know, at the, you know, giving a interview, and he was talking about some federal law enforcement not being able to be funded and stuff. With your background and your experience in law enforcement, do you feel like the federal government is necessary in the programs the federal government has, or does it need federal funding, or do you think that it's something that most of the time, unless it's obviously FBI, do you think that the states can handle this stuff themselves, funding wise?
Well, my first thought is Chuck Schumer is the last person to be talking about trying to save police, because during the 2020 Summer of Love riots, he was right there kneeling with Nancy Pelosi and all the rest of them talking about how evil the cops are. So, you know, he's the last person I would look at and say, hey, listen, you know, this is a guy who supports us. But I think the federal government should support local law enforcement, just because there are funds that the state can't provide, and there are funds that cops do need as far as, you know, just fugitive enforcement and things like that. I think that the federal government should get involved as far as policing goes, to a certain extent. I don't think that they should be allowed to dictate local law and as far as what, you know, the cops can and can't do. But I think that the federal government should have a certain set of rules to say, hey, listen, this is what the cops can do, this is what the cops can't do as far as protecting people's rights and things like that.
Historically, the federal government has had strings attached to money that comes out. Do you feel like if the federal government is funding local law enforcement or state law enforcement, do you feel like that it becomes a problem where they end up fighting over jurisdiction or who's actually calling the shots about procedure and how things should be carried out? Or is that something that you don't believe is a likelihood?
Well, that's when the federal government has to cede that power over to the states and the local governments and things like that. You know, there are things that happen on a county level, on a city level, that have nothing to do with the federal government. There are things that happen on a state level that have nothing to do with the federal government. As far as just basic protections of freedoms and rights, though, like, you know, me personally, I'm a constitutionalist. So I think that certain things are non-negotiable. as far as rights for individual people, as far as rights for the states, as far as rights for the federal government, things like that. But like I said, I consider it a source because people like Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, I don't trust them because they go with the winds and the tides and what's favoring right now, and I don't trust them. When you look at someone like Trump, who I think. Listen, I'm a Trump supporter, but I think he plays it pretty evenly. He'll call us out when we're doing wrong. He'll support us when we're doing right. I would take some advice or direction from someone like him before I would take it from someone who, they're just going to use cops. Like, you look at what happened on January 6th. Do I really think that AOC cares about cops, the way she's sitting at a cop's funeral and she's saying, oh, we need to protect our police? No. Do I think Nancy Pelosi has law enforcement's best rights and interests involved? No. But, you have to look at who it's coming from, and you have to be able to discern where your power ends and where it begins.
That's like giving funding where they should have a say. Like if we're going to give people money, like we gave colleges federal funding, or to the law enforcement officers, they have to take out DEI. There's got to be some kind of, like you were saying, there's got to be some kind of restrictions, like a format, a game plan, an outline to where they have to follow, because they can't just get money from the federal government and do whatever the heck they want to do with it. There's got to be some kind of restrictions or must needs. Like you must train every week. You must, because cops apparently, I guess they don't do a lot of training. I hear a lot that they don't. Yeah, so we can
depending on the job, I think.
Sure. But I guess officially, for the regular guys on the street, they should be doing more than once every 6 months.
Because if you're dealing with like SWAT teams or entry teams, those dudes are in the shoot house regularly because that's their job.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.